Welcome back. Howie Vickers takes us through the 60s with the Collectors.
But first, Olympic gold medalist Nancy Greene Raine talks about family and fame. Fierce determination and guts, they're part of what makes a champion. Nancy Greene Raine's biggest triumph was winning both a silver and a gold medal at the 1968 Olympics in Grenoble, France. On her return to Vancouver, the entire city closed down to welcome her home. The following year, she quit competitive skiing, married ski coach Al Raine, and gave birth to twin boys. I asked why, growing up in a home full of competitive skiers, she was the one who became the champion.
I don't know, I've often wondered that myself, because certainly we all had equal opportunity. And I guess when you look at your own children, you start to realize that everybody's different, and you come into the world with different talents and different personalities. You know, my father was involved in building the ski hill in Rossland, and so skiing was really the focus of our life in the wintertime. I think if I look back, though, it's probably my mother who shaped my personality more than my father, because she was, and still is, really quite amazing. She's a very matter-of-fact type of a person who isn't afraid of anything. She's got tremendous courage. She's had a handicap all her life, which I didn't even notice until after somebody pointed it out to me. When I was going to school, she has an arm that's paralyzed from here down. And, I mean, we really didn't notice that, and it never stopped her from doing anything. She skied, she raised 6 children, and she still skis. When you travel with a team, the team becomes your family. And, I mean, I was very fortunate, the family that I had and where I grew up. Whenever I went back home, which some years was, you know, 2 and 3 months between getting home. But whenever I went back home, my sisters and brothers used to sort of say, okay, you've been away for 3 months, it's your turn to do the dishes, you know. And there was a lot of give and take in our family. But I knew they were very, very interested. For example, in 1967, when I really inside me thought that I had no hope to win the World Cup, my father phoned me and said, Nancy, it's mathematically, it's still possible. If you do this, and if they don't do this and this, and week by week, he followed it, and he figured out really what I had to do to win. And I was trying to not think about it too much, because if I thought about it too much, I would get too uptight and blow everything. But I have to admit that it was really nice when he would call and say, you can still do it. It's still possible. And that kept me going. And in the end, I won the World Cup in the very last race of the year. And it was on Easter Sunday, and I was in the finish area at the race at Jackson Hole, Wyoming, and the loudspeaker said, Nancy Greene, please go to the judges' stand. I went over there, and they said, there's a phone call for you. And I walked in, and it was my parents phoning from Rossland, and they had been in church on Easter Sunday, and had come out of the church and were driving home and heard that I had won the World Cup.
Do you think they've been saying a couple of prayers for you while they were there?
Of course.
So you're really happy with your life today?
I can't think of anything I'd like to change. I really can't. When I look back, sometimes I think it's almost been magic, and I keep waiting for something bad to happen. You know, we've had, I guess when you grow up, you always have sadnesses happening in your life, and we've lost a few people that were very close to us, and there's been sad times as well as happy times. But on the whole, we've had a good life, and we look forward to even doing more things. And you know, this is a young country, and there's so much to do here. There's so much opportunity. If you look around, it's nice to be in British Columbia right now. It's nice to be seeing this part of Canada starting to mature and really become the focus for Canada reaching towards the Asia-Pacific area. That's important. It's a nice time to be part of it all.
With the National Alpine Championships, the winner from Canada, Nancy Greene.
During the late 60s, Howie Vickers was the dynamic lead singer of Vancouver's first high-profile band, the Collectors. Together with Bill Henderson, Glenn Miller, Ross Turney, and Claire Lawrence, they rose rapidly to fame, especially on the West Coast. The Collectors eventually became Chilliwack, who had their own years of glory. Howie Vickers is now working at Griffith Gibson Ramsay Productions, but in the beginning, he was a member of the Classics on the Let's Go show.
Look out, baby, what do you see? What do you see? Looking at a baby.
we all came out of the club scene. Well, actually, the previous to that, we were the Classics doing Let's Go show, etc.
And not so fast.
Okay.
The Classics.
Sorry.
Was it a good time being on the Let's Go show and backing up all of those?
Oh, yeah.
Tell me about the people that you worked with.
Oh, gee whiz. I'll tell you, the first thing that comes to mind about Let's Go, there's all sorts of things come to mind. And it was fun, yeah. It was with yourself, with Freddie Latrimo, Red Robinson, all sorts of folks. Plus all the musical people, Northcott, Terry Jacks, Susan Jacks. Yeah. Then Susan Paskalowitz, I guess. But the first flash I had when you talked about the Let's Go show was at one point Ken Gibson had me hosting the show. This I don't know what possessed him or what possessed me to say yes, but at any point I did that. And the first thing I remember having to do was interviewing Stevie Wonder. Well, I'd never interviewed anybody before, period. So that was my first memory.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's with great pleasure we welcome to our show Mr. Stevie Wonder. Good to see you again,
Fantastic.
Steve.
How you doing? Great.
One of our Vancouver nightclubs, Izzy's, has a policy of bringing in Motown performers, and it's thanks to Izzy that we have Steve on the show today. Glad you can make it, Steve.
Oh, it's a groove being here.
We were fortunate enough to be, as you say, the Let's Go show, and then through that, once we formed the Collectors, we got a lot of support from CBC, and we did a lot of stuff on CBC as the Collectors, and they. Some of the early stuff that the Lydia Purple sequence might be a part of was when we had a lot of demos, and these were basically videos shot to some of our early music, a lot of which I think probably never actually got onto album.
Lydia Purple lived in a steeple, tall by nature, colored by people. Lydia Purple was taken for granted by people that knew her, whose views were all slanted. Writing sonnets daily, drinking apple tea, Lydia pretending she is free.
It was around 1970, I suppose, and we mentioned Grass and Wild Strawberries was one of the last things I did. So that was basically my last involvement as the Collectors. They went on to become Chilliwack, as you know. And around 70, so I became involved with a studio in town called Studio 3 at the time. Yeah. And it was sort of around that time that I got involved in more full-time into the jingle thing, which is what I'm presently into with Brian Griffiths, Brian Gibson, Miles Ramsay, Griffiths, Gibson, Ramsay. In addition to that, around that time, I ended up I'd known Jim McGilvery for years, but we ended up forming what was the original Wildroot band, which became Wildroot Orchestra and still is Wildroot Orchestra. So through about 71 or so up to 76, we were a five-piece band. I was the lead singer with Wildroot, and around 76, I basically finished with live, on a steady basis, live performances, and I've stayed in the music business, but more from the business end of it in commercial production. Yeah, I'm involved more in producing and writing, so behind the microphone, as it were, rather than in front of it now. So,
if you had to do it all over again,
I wouldn't change anything in my life. I don't think. It's turned. Things are going real well. Okay. They've never been better, and I'm having a good time. I got a great family and great friends, and this is what better place to live.
By the way, these days, Nancy and her husband Al are owner-operators of Nancy Greene Lodge at Whistler Mountain.
And Howie co-wrote our theme song with another Let's Go performer, Terry Frewer.